What's the story behind the creation of Oswald?
Oswald.
How did you develop the characters? And did you anticipate the kind of impact, the lasting impact that it would create?
No, absolutely not. I didn't think he would carry on for multiple generations to enjoy him. Oswald, the concept began as an idea for a series of very young picture books. Because I was coming from children's books. I didn't have any real experience in animation or producing or anything at the time. So I had this idea. I started to write some books, and then I was introduced to someone at Nickelodeon here in New York. And so I did some research. I had no idea how to pitch a show. I didn't know anything. So I overdid it, really. The
Mm,
document that I gave them was like, 50 pages. Should
mm,
not have, but it doesn't matter. My naivete must have been charming. I don't know.
mm,
But
mm,
I had this idea. I wanted to create this somewhat whimsical, surreal world, but with all these really diverse characters, meaning animals, fantasy characters. You'll notice there's, a snowman and a flower and, all these, and a penguin, like none of them seem to fit in the same world. But I thought that two things. If it all is filtered through my design style, my artwork, and if I treated all the characters as if they're essentially people in costumes, in other words, they have human emotions, they have human concerns, they have human frailties, they have all of that, rather
mm,
than saying, oh, I'm an octopus and I have a lot of arms and I can do it, that to
mm.
me will dehumanize the character. So I felt like we need to play this straight through as if there were people.
I have been eagerly looking forward to this conversation with you. I hold you in high esteem, Dan, for the impact that you have created, that you are creating in your industry and beyond. And especially for me, growing up, watching your show, Oswald, I adored the show, which is the reason why, for viewers who can actually watch this episode, and for viewers who are listening to this episode right now, I'm actually wearing the blue octopus color right now. My blazer is blue, and it's a tribute to the character because I love it so much. Uh, so your journey, your background, it's so intriguing. This is indeed a special episode for me. To create a show like Oswald and, whatever stories that you share through your art, it takes a great deal of imagination, right? So you wear multiple hats professionally. You are an author, illustrator, television writer, and also a producer. And you've
Yep.
created so many imaginative worlds. So let's get back to the start. Were you always this creative, Dan? What has been your creative journey like?
Yes, always. Ever since I could pick up a crayon and draw on the basement wall and then get in trouble for it. I just love to just produce ideas. They're all inside of me and I have to get them out ever since I was very, very young. I knew that it felt right when I was drawing and when I was really young, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, that I was such a fan of books that I wanted to make my own. So I would just get some paper and fold it in half and staple it, and I'd make my own books because I loved creating characters and worlds and telling their story. And that went, on over the years to building things, making little films, writing scripts for myself as a kid. So I essentially do a lot of the things that I did when I was growing up, but I do them professionally now. So not much
Mm-hmm,
has changed. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's always this inner, I wouldn't even call it a desire, it's an inner need to get these ideas out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's beautiful that you were able to, have that love affair with creativity and art from the start. I think it's truly a gift. Do you think it's as you mentioned, you had it from the get-go. Do you think creativity is like a muscle that you activate or something that you inherit? Some people just naturally have it like you do, right?
I would I would really consider it more of, look, I know that to say that I come up with ideas may not be entirely accurate. I think
Mm,
that you have to have your, mind open and your antenna up and receive ideas. I don't, I mean, honestly, on some level, I don't take any credit for anything I've done. And it just is sort of, it comes to me and I'm sort of the vessel. And
Mm,
so I have this great need and desire for all the work that I do to have some element of kindness and empathy.
mm,
And I know that that's my mission, that's my job through my books.
mm,
I think that's why essentially why I'm here and why I'm doing this work is to get this message out and in an entertaining way. And if any other children's book creators, you'll know that the good thing about us is that we get the audience first. We get the
mm,
audience for big, $1 million budget movies. We get them before series, we get them before novels, we get them before video games, we get them before all of that. So we have this awesome responsibility to
mm,
start them off in the world when they're interacting with something creative, to make sure that that message is the best message or the right message. And for me, empathy and kindness has always been the message from all of my
mm,
work. As you mentioned,
mm,
Oswald, he just embodied all of that kindness and generosity. And I wanted to create something, in Oswald's case, in a fanciful, slightly whimsical, surreal way, but always the underlying message was kindness and empathy.
mm, mm, mm. I agree with you there. And the fact that a lot of parents today are showing their kids 90s shows says a lot
Yes.
because of the, excessive stimulation. I feel like there is a gentle pacing when you compare the shows of, 90s shows to
Oh,
the
yeah.
new ones. Whether it's the
Mhm.
colors, it can be just too much sometimes. It can be like a sensory overload. So I
Yeah.
believe that the underlying messages of empathy and friendship and compassion and kindness, it truly reflects in everything that you do, whether it is a show that you're creating, whether it's through your books. It's quite evident. We could clearly see that, and the fact that your art, Dan, resonates across multiple generations. You've created art that resonates with multiple generations. So how do you do that? Uh, how do you stay true to your own voice while evolving with modern audiences?
Well, like I said, I have a core belief of what I do and the message, and and it's not like an effort to stick to it. I enjoy it. I love expressing that same message over and over in different, entertaining, unique ways.
Hmm,
But I tend to not pay too much attention to trends and things like that because I've seen them come and go over and over. The cycle of
hmm,
popularity of things, and a lot of people invest in it. They think it's going to last forever, and it just kind of it's the end of that. Then the next one comes.
hmm,
So I feel that I should not give in to these trends because they're only transitory, they're only
hmm,
momentary.
hmm,
But a message of empathy is timeless. And so if you'll notice with a lot of my work, I try to make it timeless and universal. And I know that was something you wanted to discuss. And so then as many people experiencing this can find something to relate to. You know
hmm,
that
hmm,
Oswald continues to be very big in India.
hmm,
Every day I get multiple messages, emails, things like that, telling me how much they enjoyed people in their 20s, or people starting their families and a new family, and they're showing their kids Oswald. And I know that there's a need to, as you mentioned, to slow down and to be mindful and thoughtful.
yeah.
And that was the goal for that show. And I would speak to the directors and I'd tell them, I don't, there's a long sequence. And a lot of shows will cut away and show, close up or this or that. I said, try to stay on the character as long as possible,
Hmm,
create this, this sort of pace to it. Follow them. They'll stop, they'll do something, and then they'll keep moving. I said, try to have as few cuts as possible in the show because I think that kind of breaks your attention, and especially the
Mm.
younger viewer. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to have these long takes where things happen, but it's just at a slower pace.
Mm. It does impact their nervous system, and they're so
Yeah.
little, and everything is, it's like a foundation for them, right? They're grasping their environment, they're listening to people, they're hearing everything. They're out on an adventure, kids, and as they're on this adventure, everything that they are trying to understand, trying to comprehend, it forms a basis for their subconscious mind. And as they say, even I think in the Bible, there is a verse that says, "Give me a child until 7, I'll make a man out of him," right?
Yeah.
And everything the child experiences until a certain age, they carry this programming for the rest of their life unless they do something about it, right? So yes, we definitely need that gentle pacing, and the excessive cuts can really exhaust
Yeah.
children. Also, the fact that you are the recipient of prestigious awards like the Bologna Ragazzi Award,
Ragazzi. Yes.
Ragazzi, if I'm saying
I
it the
like
right way, the Italian way. You
fantastic.
presented you presented at Pixar Animation Studios and even visited the White House. Do you think when you receive such institutional recognition, does that change how you view your own work, or do you prefer a more Zen, like more stoic mindset?
I I lean towards a more stoic mindset. It's wonderful to get recognition, especially from your peers, but also these other institutions. And I think the most positive effect it has on me is that it makes me think even more broadly. Whereas, I'm in my own little imaginative space, and I think about the child that I was. I try to stay as connected as possible to that little 7-year-old kid and what he would understand, what would resonate with him. But when I, go out into the world and say, go to Pixar and speak to these brilliant, talented animators and
Mm,
designers, or I'm invited to the White House to read my books, or like I said, the Bologna Ragazzi, it just, I guess it reminds me of the reach of work, not only my work, but just creative work in general. And because I'm working specifically for children, again, like I said, it's an awesome responsibility when you
mm,
really take into account that input. As you said, the sort of the for lack of a better word, programming, you have to program them with kindness and generosity, compassion. And
absolutely.
we look to the adults, children are looking to adults in their lives to guide them. And we've been around longer than them, so we should have a
Mm,
handle on,
mm,
what the, right material and the wrong material is. So not too often, children buy books. It's the
mm.
adults who buy them books.
Okay,
And
that's interesting.
but it's true. Not a lot of
Mm.
children go into a bookstore with a credit card and say, "I'll take that one. I'll take that one." It's
Not
usually,
even, not even like books for
oh, the book
children.
fair. Well, it's the
Okay,
Scholastic Fair. Well, I remember doing that as a
but that's
kid.
a
You get
less number, you think? Okay,
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
okay.
Mostly books bought by adults, and as adults and as caretakers of children. I have two adult
Mm,
children of my own. I was very
mm,
careful about what I read to them and what they were exposed to.
mm,
And we all need to be mindful of that. If we're curating a library for a child, or at least guiding them, what videos to watch. It is again, as a creator, and I'm removed from, raising someone's child, but I
mm,
know that
mm,
all the work that comes out of me, I would want my own children to have experienced it.
mm. Also, given that children today, their attention span is shrinking.
Yep.
I grew up in a
Yep.
time, I believe it was almost like a sweet spot because I grew up between technology and no technology. I'm like
Right.
1997 born. So I know
Yeah.
exactly what it is to not have Instagram, and I know what it is to have Instagram when it was new, when Facebook
Right.
was. the it thing back in those days.
It was, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, for us, we could watch a video, like a long video, but for a lot of kids today, even if it is a cartoon show, they cannot watch a show for very long and forget reading. So in this kind of a scenario, to create something so compelling and so engaging
Mhm.
is definitely a challenge, right? But despite that, something that
Yeah.
is incredible about your work is that it connects with people. You've captivated audience from across the globe, transcending even cultural boundaries. Again, how do you do that? Do you think they connect with you because of your simplicity or, your timelessness, as you mentioned, the universal themes of kindness and compassion and love? Or do you
Mhm.
think there's something more nuanced?
Well, I certainly reject a lot of my work before it comes out of the studio. So these are sort of near misses and things. And I
Hmm.
have to go through this sort of filter that I have. It's just this is the best thing that I can do. Is this the right message? As far as it being relatable over a few decades and across cultures, you're correct. The surface of it is very simple, and it is what has been described over and over as deceptively simple.
Hmm.
So I try to make the presentation, the surface level, as entertaining and in some cases the most colorful or funny or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And then there's always some deeper message in it that most of the time it's related to kindness and empathy and compassion. But I think these are, as you mentioned, these are very universal qualities that we want in our lives.
Hmm.
So I think it's the timelessness. A lot of it has to do with not putting technology in the work, the books or the shows. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You can't, just simply can't.
Hmm.
And then sort of the universality of the culture. I try my best again, but I understand I live in the United States. I understand that my life experiences, in Western culture, and I get that. I try my best to separate all of that, at least story-wise. And if you
Hmm.
boil them down, they're just
Yeah.
about the human experience. However, I do get emails and text messages from viewers in India who told me that they never knew what a marshmallow was. So that was, they had no idea what that was. And they finally got, like in a situation I only thought that was on television. Marshmallows, ice cream trucks,
Oh
also.
my God, yes.
Yeah, see? So these things I take for granted because I grew up in the United States, and I figured,
Mm.
ooh, but if it's a little window into this culture for another culture in a very gentle, soft way, that's fine. I hope they enjoyed the marshmallows, but it's it is sometimes I can't avoid it. Sometimes I have to put something akin to a smartphone or something like that. But I always default to the, you know, either no tech or low tech. But in the case of, I did this book called Doug Unplugs, which eventually became an animated series. The other option would be to invent your own technology. So then it exists only in that universe. It doesn't age. It doesn't, look out of place because it's in the
Hmm.
design and style of the rest of the
Hmm.
show. So their phones or whatever their communication devices are doesn't look like anything we have here, but it does fit into the content and sort of the art direction of the show. So
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
ways that I've learned how to get around things. I'm not a big trend guy,
Hmm.
I don't follow trends really, even in my personal life. I just kind of, I like the music I like the movies I like, the books
Hmm.
I like. Sometimes things leak in, but honestly, it's almost like, I'm a monk in a way, just doing my work and,
Maybe
and just,
maybe that is what is keeping that curiosity and that childlike play and wonder in you alive. Because honestly, with everything that we are witnessing in the world right now, it is hard to maintain your mental peace. So, also the fact that this year, I read somewhere, I think they call 2026 the year of the analog. And I saw a study. It said people who engage in grandma hobbies like gardening, knitting, and all the chores that our grandmas loved, they're actually good for your mental health. And we see a rise in a lot of records, like actual physical, CDs and cassettes. People are actually going back
Yeah.
to that for that nostalgic feel. And there's a reason for that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even for me, Dan, watching Oswald, you cannot record the show. When it airs, it
Right.
airs. You eagerly wait. I would come back from school and without even changing, the first thing is like, Mom, I need to watch Oswald because I know during this time, this the show is going to air. So I used to sit down.
Yeah.
My mom would give me the snacks, the evening snacks after coming back from school. Oh my God, those were the days. But I had a blast. I had a blast. And I would watch the show, and I don't want to, I want to confess that even after that episode of the tomatoes, I think I remember the episode of the tomatoes when he was growing tomatoes, Oswald, right? And I have literally tried to keep the light bulb close to the tomatoes, thinking it's gonna grow big the next day. And my mom's like, "That's not gonna happen. It's just a show. It's not gonna happen." But because I
Right.
was a child, I was telling mom, "No, it is going to happen." So that was the kind of impact that it had on me. And even the voice of Oswald, the voiceover, it was
Yeah.
so calming and endearing, and I absolutely loved it. You mentioned
Yes.
Doug unplugs, right? This is
Yes.
very interesting because here is a robot not only
Mhm.
experiencing the human world, but also exploring our emotions.
Right.
How did you approach telling a story like that where a robot is learning about emotions of wonder, joy, exploration?
Well, that, a lot of times books in my mind, or sometimes if they make it to my sketchbook, just stayed for a very long time. And as I said, I have two children, they're adults now, but when they were growing up was the rise of technology. And I recall several times when they were in elementary school, bringing them to the library rather than going online. Let's go to the library, speak to the librarian, and ask, what for what you need, and explain what what the project is and all of that. And I thought two things will come out of that. One, that
Mm,
my kids will go to the library as a resource, and two, it's also how to communicate with an adult. That was the social benefit of it. So, and they knew how to speak to an adult, and and ask questions properly. But it was just sort of a nice thing that it can. And look, we live in Manhattan, so there are tons of museums. And so my daughter had some project, some cultural based project. And so we went to the museum. She took pictures, she made notes, we got some pamphlets and brochures. And I started thinking about that is this technology is going to be even more prevalent. I mean, even at that
mm,
time they had iPads in school and things like that. But I I wanted to address that because this is becoming more and more of a, prominent in kids' lives. And I circled this for a long time. I'm like, how can I talk about kids and technology, and not to malign technology, not to say that technology is bad. The message of the book is that there are two types of information. One is technical information, meaning things you can acquire online, facts,
mm,
figures, history, evidence, all this. The other one is experiential learning. And that, combined with or armed with technical information, will only enhance the whole experience. A lot of people got it wrong and said that it was anti-computer or anti whatever digital technology.
mm,
It is, it's not going away, and I accept that,
mm,
And but I thought, well, if you marry these two things together, like some fact about, I think, an early sketch that didn't make it into the book was Doug knew that butterflies, and there was some fact about butterflies, but he didn't know how wonderful it is to capture one on his finger and watch it flutter its wings. So it's like a combination of these two things. It's
mm,
information and experience. And I felt very strongly when I started to see my kids go to Wikipedia, which is,
mm.
who knows what that is, but it was the conclusion that I drew. How can I how can I tell the story? What can I hang it on? And then I thought, oh, I know. Here's a character that's so steeped in technical information in the digital world that almost like Pinocchio, like wants to be a real kid. So he goes out and experiences the world and acquires information that you cannot get online. And so it's sort of the balance that we should have.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, I also feel like when it comes to technology, uh, there is a recent video that I saw. I think it was from this series called Doraemon. It's a Japanese show. And back in those days, the character Nobita would narrate all his problems to the robot because Doraemon is a
Mhm.
robot.
Mhm.
And we would be like, why is this kid sharing about all his problems to a robot? Fast
Mhm.
forward to 2026, we're doing the same with ChatGPT. We're doing
We
the same
are.
with ChatGPT. And what you mentioned is so true. You're not saying that technology is bad. You're not talking about it in that fashion. But what you're saying is, as you highlighted different types of learning, right? I think that's very important to talk about. Also, speaking of technology,
Yes.
AI art is flooding the space. Do you think AI can be a tool to expand an artist's imagination, or do you think it's diminishing that essential human spark? And how do you, keep that creative vision at the center of an artist?
That's tough. Well, look, I remember when creating art digitally was on the rise in the mid to late 90s. And it had a very similar, the public had a very similar response. Creatives had a very similar response that all you have to do is press a button and then you create it. And it is not so. Most of my books start off as usual, by hand, brush and ink on paper and then scan it and then manipulate the colors. And I'm able to have more control over it, move things that much instead of having to redo it all over again. I found a medium point. I found a sort
Hmm,
of a set point of how to use it. I don't let it use me. And if you look at my work, it's very simple and straightforward. Really, it's just shape, color, shapes, and line. That's
hmm,
really it. And no matter how many wonderful effects and filters and different things I can do in that program, I choose to just use it for clarity and simplicity and straightforwardness. With I look at it as an assist or a tool. People are going to allow it to dictate what they do, but people allow, say Photoshop to do what Photoshop wants to do rather than them. You have to
hmm,
remember at some point it'll set again, find its set point, settle down, and be considered just a tool. I use it occasionally. I mean, I use it for, other like I had it review a contract, and sometimes I'll ask for what will I ask it to do? Sometimes, I mean, with text, it's terrible. So I've given up on using it to write anything decent, other than maybe could you tighten this by a paragraph, and it'll do that kind of stuff. That's fine. But as far as artwork, I'll ask it to create something, and that'll always, if I use it and it resonates with me, I'll use that as a jumping off point. But by no means is that the final product. And I do see it out there all the time. There's kind of generic versions. There's the
hmm,
dimension
hmm.
one, there's the line-based one, there's the painterly one. But you can tell because they're so sort of generic looking without any
Yep.
detail that, I'm sure if a lifelike robot sat down next to you and there was a human being next to that, you'd be able to tell the difference. There is something in the spark of humanity, there's something there that we can detect.
Hmm,
And especially with this AI stuff, which at this point is pretty obvious,
hmm,
who's generating this stuff. I don't
hmm,
consider
hmm,
that real artwork. I consider it on the way to real artwork,
hmm,
but I don't, and it'll always bear out. Quality always bears out. And
hmm,
so, doubt if somebody, I mean, maybe I'll be wrong, but I doubt if somebody could, have a best-selling book that had no human interaction with it to create it at all.
hmm,
There's something in us that with books, everything, anything that's put out there, what we're really looking for as the receiver or the person sending it out, we're looking for a connection. We're looking for a human connection.
Hmm.
And, with some of my books at the end, and I've read them in public, read them to kids and, at conferences, different things. And the greatest compliment I can get at the end of the book is the audience saying, "Oh." It hit them somehow. It hit them right here, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know if AI can. I think AI can probably do a superficial version of it where you're left with, "Oh, yeah, but you're not going to get that heartfelt, oh."
Yeah, that is true. That is true because even if you look at our ancestors, they were so focused. They didn't have so many distractions. And if you look at the marvel, the architectural marvels, right? It's incredible. When I look at artists like Vincent van Gogh, or when I look at, many other artists, of course, it's so pristine, like it's so crisp. Their art, it's immaculate. Like I don't find any flaw in their art. And it's done with so much devotion that it connects with people instantly. And that is the power of the human touch. So it's incredible that artists can now use, such tools to use, as you mentioned, as a source of brainstorming and
Yeah,
ideation, as like a
that's
jumping
it.
off. Yeah. And then from then on, you can create something of your own, something that is authentic to your own voice. Yeah, that's I think the right approach to have. Uh, Speaking of character development, speaking of art, what is your process like? How does that appear in your mind, creatively speaking? Do you see a character fully in a form, or do you develop that as it evolves through writing and sketching?
I'll have a lot of times, for some weird reason, I'll hold it in my head for a long time. And I guess I have to, if it's a character or a story,
Hmm.
just the initial germ will live in my mind sometimes for years before I set it down on paper. But I think for my own self, I think it has to become a little bit more developed before I'll commit it to paper. And then if you go through, well, hang on, my sketchbooks, I mean, there's just
Hmm.
tons of exploratory drawings of trying to figure out, what these characters are. Hang on one sec, I can show you I have a new book that just came out called Piccolo, and
Yes.
he's a little,
Which,
yes,
yeah, which I absolutely want to discuss with you about.
sure. Well, I
Yeah.
can use him as an example. Hang on. And there he is. This was the very first drawing of him, so he looks a little bit different than he does now. But you can
Yeah.
see the little scribble, and
Mhm.
then throughout the pages, then he becomes, more developed. And you can see him now playing around with him and other characters and different things like that. And there he is, you know, um, sipping espresso and in on a
Italy,
Maserati.
having
But
his
this is
gelato.
the process I go through to
Mhm.
figure him out. And I don't
Mhm.
even think I had a story at the time. I just wanted to create this, again, this optimistic, glasses half full character because I believe that, you know, it should be embodied in something. And, and then I can create stories for this character. And the fun part about creating stories for me is in, putting in the humor and the obstacles along this character's way and see how they react and respond. And that defines
Mm.
who they are. And, it's a pure joy to create these books. I
Mm.
so enjoy it. Someone asked me not too long ago, what else would you do? And I said, this is pretty much it. This is all I really want to do, other than cooking. I love cooking, but I wouldn't want to cook, in a restaurant every day. But really, this is it. I figured out the thing that I loved to do when I was about 5 years old. I'm very, very grateful that I was able to have the experience that hit me in a certain way, and that I got enough encouragement from my family
Mm.
that I was able to move ahead. And I had little painting lessons when I was about 8 years old, and then I went to some cartooning school for a summer, and then I eventually enrolled at Parsons School of Design in Manhattan,
Mm.
and I was an illustration major, and they did support me, and I was really fortunate because my family is not, I mean, they're a bunch, they're mostly businessmen and women and people that have small businesses and things like that. Really, it's just sort of out of their purview. So, although my brother's an author, we're it, we're just my brother and I are just the two creatives, more or less professionally in the family. Um,
Mhm.
but having all that encouragement and support enabled me to be able to be here, you know.
Mm.
Um, and there's a long history in my family that I documented in a book I wrote and illustrated called All the Way to America, the story of a big Italian family and a little shovel, which tells the story of my great grandfather coming from Sorrento, Italy,
Okay.
to New York and the
Mm.
generations that came after that. And I realized, doing some research for the book, and my grandmother was alive at the time, and I was able to talk to her and get dates and names and different things like that. And
Mm.
I see that how I'm on the shoulders of all of my ancestors. They did the hard work, they, did the rough jobs, they saved their money, they did what they could, and then I was able to go to college with my brother and sister, and we're very fortunate. But if it wasn't for them, I
Mm.
don't know, it would be quite a different life.
Yeah.
So very grateful that my family values education, hard work, and family. And
Mm.
that realize is those are the three most important things you can have in your life. To love what you do, to love your family, enjoy your life too. Those are
Mm.
important.
Yeah. And I think because you grew up in that kind of atmosphere, in such a supportive environment with love from your family and support for your craft, helping you build your vision, that then later on we see that reflecting in your work as well. And that sense of positivity, right? We can see that reflecting in your shows, in your art, in your illustrations, your books. Yeah, so I do agree that that having the kind of support system can play a huge role in
Yeah,
our journey. Speaking of which, I think you mentioned you love cooking.
yes,
Um,
yes, I
is
do.
it a very Italian thing though? Because I see a lot of Italians. I'm sorry if I'm stereotyping you, but I think they're very
No.
possessive about their food, right? And they're very
Yes,
passionate about their food.
yes,
And I understand it because I'm also extremely passionate in particular about my food.
yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that you were able to document and create something like that, I'm sure that whilst you were doing that, you must have discovered so many things about your own family, right? Things that you probably may have never known. That's
Correct.
amazing. And Piccolo is an Italian character. So could you tell
Yes, yes.
us a bit about your upcoming books? It's Piccolo and one more book. It's I Am Murphy, I'm Waiting, right?
Here he is. Here's
Yes.
Piccolo.
Oh my
There he
God. So cute.
is.
Love it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Um,
Where
I
would these be available? And please talk to us about these two books.
Sure. Well, Piccolo and the sequel, Piccolo and the Chicks, where he babysits a little brood of chicks. Piccolo is out, so you can get it anywhere. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or I would prefer you purchase that at your local indie bookstore. But if not, it's available, everywhere you buy books. And I love my culture. I had done that book about my family, which, it's my family coming to this country and all that. And I started to examine the culture a little bit more closely. Since that book, but before Piccolo, I started the process of at least trying to get dual citizenship with Italy for myself and my kids. So we'll see
Mm.
how that works out. But I've certainly been to Italy. I don't really speak Italian all that well, so I would never attempt that, especially here. But I adore my culture. Being Italian American is different than being Italian. I
Mm.
grew up, I would define myself as an American of Italian descent. But I feel that in this culture, in North American culture, being Italian as, is sort of the flat stereotype. And I'm not going to go into what that is. But what I wanted, one of the goals for the book is to present the beauty of the culture It's not all about food. It's about architecture and automotive design and fashion and music and literature and all these different things that I wanted to present in book form to show the readers, the very young readers, that there is a world out there that kind of looks like this,
Mm,
and it could be a bit different than the American version of being Italian. So I guess what I really wanted to do is counter that popular image with something that's more positive. And to me, and I love drawing architecture, little bricks and things like that.
mm.
But also, I appreciate, the design of, Maserati or a Lamborghini. I can
Oh,
appreciate
I
those
love Lamborghini.
and high fashion and
Yes. Yeah.
and of course there is food, but food is mentioned very little in the book, and I did that on purpose. I
Mm,
didn't want it to dominate,
mm,
and I wanted to equate that with all the other aspects of the culture. So that's the goal for that, but also again to present a character who puts his friend's needs above his in the first story. And then the second story is a fun romp where again he has to, put others ahead of him. And I think that's the message for those books. I Am Murphy and I Am Waiting is about this little dog, a sort of he's a French bulldog.
mm.
And he's a close personal friend of mine, by the way. He's real. He's not here
Oh,
today.
oh.
But I looked at him um, as a toddler, essentially. If when the book comes out, you'll see it. Murphy's sort of having the life experience, being introduced into the world, sort of in the same way a toddler would. So they're kind of negotiating this world that they're fairly new here, and they are experiencing these things. And the first story, there'll be a sequel. I'm still working on the sketches for.
Mm,
I Am Murphy and I Am Waiting is about his owner, a little boy that goes to school. And the whole day of him having anxiety, trying to occupy himself and trying to, think about other things, and barking at, the mail coming through the slot and all these he's hilarious. And then
mm,
he's reunited at the end. The second book, I can't really talk about it because I don't exactly know what it is yet, but
mm,
we'll see. But he's a great character too. I adore him. The reason, or one of the reasons behind the title, I Am Murphy.
mm,
Uh, I believe personally, the most positive and affirming thing that you can say to yourself is, I am. And then whatever it is that you desire to be. I'm not saying it'll work all the time, but it puts you in a good mind frame. I am
mm,
happy. I am fulfilled. I am satisfied. And I think that affirming statement, I am, is really important to me. And also, the additional reason is that kids that age, toddler age, they live in the now. There's very little past. Who knows what the future is?
yeah.
So you'll learn a lesson from children where they're in the now all the time.
Mm,
And I find that fascinating and inspiring. And that's where part of the reason why the title is I Am is because
mm,
little kids live in the now. You'll notice that Murphy in the book doesn't know that the boy will come home, even though the boy came home all these other days. They're in the now, right now. It's a
mm, mm,
toddler
mm,
mindset. And so I felt very strongly about that. Throughout the book, some of the sentences begin, I am. Again, I am nervous. I am
mm.
is, I am thirsty, and he's drinking out of the toilet, so,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
fully engaged. And that was the other reason why I said, why I wanted the title to be I Am.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I never thought of that. Because you graciously shared the PDF of these
Yes.
two books. I went through them.
Mhm.
I read I Am Murphy and I'm Waiting, and it's adorable. At the same time, I feel sad for Murphy. But I'm happy that in the end they reunite. But I never for once thought that it was about being in the present moment. That's very profound. And as you were speaking, I was actually noting it down. There were so many points that you've been talking about that I've been noting down because I believe that people who hail from different personal, professional backgrounds have their own, sort of POV, their own way of thinking. And I love to learn from different people about, their experiences and try to apply that in my own life in my own way. So this is truly a gift to be able to speak with someone like you, Dan, with such a positive outlook in life. And you bring children so much joy with what you do, right? So what is the message that you have for kids tuning in right now, listening later on,
Here.
uh, who sometimes feel depressed because of the situation that we are in today, or one idea that you would like to, implore, that you'd like to share?
I would say that they should figure out what they really, really love doing and pursue that. Follow your passion.
Hmm.
Everything else will follow after that. If it's a job or money or a position or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But everything is, I look at everything, first of all, everything is temporary. We're all
Hmm.
renting here, no matter how much you think you own anything. We're all
Yeah. Yeah.
renters. Um, so a lot of things are going to come and go in your life, and you have to really, your job as a human being, a very young, small human being, is to try everything you can, everything that's in your purview of your life, and then try to go outside of that. And you may discover the passion. I discovered that, my passion for my work when I was really young, and that has guided me throughout my life. And I'm friend of mine, someone from Oswald, he was a British guy. I
Hmm.
brought him to be the production manager. He said to me, "You're bloody minded." And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." Meaning, I'm very focused and,
Hmm.
I stick to what I want. You have to believe in that thing. If you don't believe in it, then you're going to abandon it when times get tough.
Yeah.
So if you need to do this, then you've hit upon the thing that you should be doing. Because if you need to do it and you will inevitably come up against an obstacle, you will then be compelled to figure out how to go under it, over it, around it, instead of just standing there saying, this is too hard and walking away. Because if that's too hard, then you really didn't find your passion in your life. You will always
Hmm.
find an excuse if you don't want to do it. And so I think that you need it as much as metaphorically, if you were underwater and you needed oxygen. I need to do the work that I do, otherwise, I'm not me. And maybe I don't know if that's right or wrong to have it so fused to my self-image or my personality, but it's okay because I enjoy what I do. It has some kind of an effect out into the world, a positive effect, I'm hoping, and I'm happy. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. I'm at actually a very good point in my life, and lots of things are just sort of coming, into my realm, I guess. And I think that has a lot to do with a positive, upbeat view, is that you start attracting,
Hmm.
certain things. And that goes back to the I am.
Hmm. Certainly. And I needed this too. Honestly, I needed this too because as I am also creating a TV show for the first time in my life, and I don't come from an entertainment background,
Yeah.
this has been a scary path. It's an uncharted territory. Um, and coming from a refugee background where I've heard so many no's, and growing up as a child, the kind of voices that echoed around me was, we don't even have a country, so why dream big? Why fly high? Right? And I think when I was a kid, this is what I heard. So for kids who are watching this episode, and who resonate with your work, who love your shows, this is a beautiful message. Also, a great reminder that mortality is real and mortality motivation can truly push you to live your life the way you desire because we are but a guest on this planet. We think we're here forever, but the reality is that the time on this planet, on this blue planet, is quite precious, and every single minute is truly, I believe, precious. So how you choose to spend it, that's important. And with regards to what you shared about dreaming and never giving up despite the odds that might you know, um, that might challenge and test your patience. You
Yeah.
just keep going. It's very hard, right? I know it's easier said than done. When it actually happens to you, a lot
Mhm.
of people they feel depressed and they feel like maybe this is not for me. But on
Yeah.
the other side, there is relentless possibilities. There is so much waiting for you on the other side. Now, here comes a much awaited question before I
Uh,
don't want to wrap up our conversation. I could go on for an eternity because there's so much we could talk about, but obviously, perhaps in the future, if we could do, chapter two of this, it'd be wonderful. But for now, I have just a few more questions. Number one is, I have to ask you this as a fan of Oswald. What's the story behind the creation of this show? What's the story behind the creation of Oswald? How did you develop the characters? And did you anticipate the kind of impact, the lasting impact that it would create?
The answer to that last question is no, absolutely not. I didn't think he would, carry on and for multiple generations to enjoy him. Oswald, the concept began as an idea for a series of very young picture books because I was coming from children's books. I didn't have any real experience in animation or producing or anything at the time. So I had this idea. I started to write some books, and then I was introduced to someone at Nickelodeon here in New York. And so I did some research. I had no idea how to pitch a show. I didn't know anything. So I overdid it, really. The
Mm,
document that I gave them was like, 50 pages. Should
mm,
not have, but it doesn't matter. My naivete must have been charming. I don't know.
mm,
But
mm,
I had this idea. I wanted to create this world, this somewhat whimsical, surreal world, but with all these really diverse characters, meaning animals, fantasy characters. You'll notice there's, a snowman and a flower and, all these and a penguin, like none of them seem to fit in the same world. But I thought that two things, if it all is filtered through my design style, my artwork, and if I treated all the characters as if they're essentially people in costumes. In other words, they have human emotions, they have human concerns, they have human frailties, they have all of that, rather
mm,
than saying, oh, I'm an octopus and I have a lot of arms and I can do it. That to
mm,
me will dehumanize the character. So I felt like we need to play this straight through as if there were people,
mm,
except he's a big blue octopus with a little hat, and she's a flower, and she's a butterfly, and there are paper doll peoples and all kind, people and all that sort of thing. And so I wanted to create a diverse world under the umbrella of my own work, and I also would love to be able, not that I wasn't putting it into books, but here's a bigger opportunity, like a bigger sort of audience to put in these messages that I try to put into the books. And if you'll watch these episodes, I wrote an episode I wrote a bunch of episodes, and one of the ones that I wrote, one of my most favorite ones, because I really feel like it nailed it. It didn't get watered down or anything, was called Cloud Collecting. And
mm.
Oswald is surrounded by his friends. If you recall, Henry collected
Yep,
spoons.
yep,
And Daisy was collecting something, and some,
yep,
the eggs were collecting whatever. And Oswald's
mm,
like, I'd like to collect something. So he looks up and he said, I'd like to collect clouds.
mm,
And so he goes, the episode is him going through all these sort of futile attempts at trying to grasp something that is ineffable. You
mm,
can't. And he thinks he got it, and he
mm,
opens his hands and it just dissipates. And so, out of either, I don't know, frustration or resignation, he lies down on the grass in the park. And then Henry comes and Daisy comes lay down and Weenie's there. And
mm,
Henry says, that's quite a cloud collection you got, buddy. And they're just looking. So, in other words, some things are only meant to be enjoyed and
yep,
and, and possessed. And
yep,
that to me is a big deal. There's another episode of my favorite, I'll be quick about it, called the Polka Dot Umbrella, where Oswald finds this, kind of ugly. I told the designer, make the ugliest umbrella you can come up with.
mm,
of this really ugly polka dot umbrella that Oswald, happens upon in the park.
Okay,
And
I
then
remember that.
remember
Yeah.
that one? And so he's trying to get rid of it. The whole
Mm,
episode, it keeps somehow, in this kind of funny way, keeps coming back to him. He leaves it in an umbrella stand, and somebody said, "You forgot your umbrella." He
mm,
puts it in a garbage can, which then gets lifted on a garbage truck, gets hooked on this wire, goes in the playground, goes, like all these things, goes the slide, and he goes, "I'm so glad I finally got rid of that umbrella," and it lands right in his hands. So he's out of frustration. He's like, "All right, I guess I'm going to keep it." They sit on the bench, him and Henry and Weenie sit on the bench. And all the people that refused the umbrella because he was trying to give it away throughout the episode
mm, mm.
suddenly show up when it starts to rain. He
Yep.
opens this huge umbrella and it covers everyone. And so, in other words, sometimes the universe gives you something. You may not know why, or maybe the timing's a little off, but you have to be open to that. And he was there,
Mm,
his friends,
yep.
and used the umbrella that he didn't think he needed until the universe told him, "You need this thing." So there's a lot of things like that throughout a whole series that I really tried hard to put into the scripts, and hopefully, even if it's on a subconscious level, I'm hoping that the viewer could somehow absorb some aspect of that.
Wow. When I was watching this as a kid, and I believe a lot of people, a lot of kids who were watching this growing up, probably
Mhm.
never thought of this. Now
Mm,
that you're telling me about this, that about the universe and,
mm.
wow, that's an interesting perspective. I've never thought of it that way. And as you've told me now, I think next time when I watch Oswald, I'm gonna watch it with that lens. I have more idea about that.
Use these two eyes. Use this eye.
Yeah. Do you meditate? Do you
Yeah.
meditate quite
Oh
often?
yeah. For
Ah,
years, I
okay.
went to the TM Institute here in Manhattan for a while.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That shows because people
Mm.
who meditate, and obviously you have that talent and you've worked hard for that. You've sharpened your skills. But I believe with meditation, I've heard a lot of creative people say that when they meditate, they kind of download
Yeah.
information from the quantum world. I don't want to sound like a philosopher or a scientist, which either of them
Mm.
I'm not, but because I am always looking for something intellectually stimulating, always learning something new. I read and also came across people, creative individuals, who told me that when you meditate, you are able to download information, certain ideas that you perhaps wouldn't have yourself. And just like you have that journal where you create sketches, and when you have a random burst of creativity, does that happen to you when, you're sleeping and in the middle of the night you wake up, look, I have an idea, and then you write it down. Do you go back to sleep after the, do you do that? Do you have this kind of ritual?
All the time, and I can't go back to sleep
Oh,
because then I'll
same.
want to keep going in that flow of ideas.
Yeah.
So I'll scribble everything down that I can. You're right, in a burst.
Mm,
Sometimes it comes down. I look
yeah.
at everybody as having an antenna, sort of, and
Yeah.
you have to keep the line clear and the signal clear so you can,
Yeah. Yeah.
to pick up on this stuff. But like I said earlier, it's almost as if, yeah, you're sort of receiving information, and you deliver that
Mm,
information through your own style, which is based on your experience, your taste, your where you live, when you live, all those things. But a
mm,
lot of it's the same message over for all sorts of creative people, but
mm,
we all do it in our own way, and that's what we're interested in. But ultimately, I think we're looking for the connection.
mm, mm, mm,
That's really it. When I create a book, there's nothing better than to get a message that, they understood what I was trying to convey, and that it sort of touched them somehow. It resonated with them. And I know that,
mm,
and I did my job then.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And finally,
Yes.
uh, I would love for you to share your thoughts on resilience in creative careers. I'm sure people who might listen to this or watch this, who aspire to be, accomplished in their creative industries, what message would you like to give them, especially when the going gets tough?
Ah, it's easy to say, but very difficult to do. Is you really just have to believe in yourself, and that what you're doing is worthwhile. And maybe, a billion people may not see it, but the few people that it does reach will be meaningful. And that in itself should be enough. Everything else is extra, but you have to continue to believe in yourself. You'll only realize that you've are on the right path is, again, if there's an obstacle in that path, pay attention to what you do, how you react to respond to that. If you abandon it, you went down the wrong road. Back up and try again. If you stay with it and figure out a way to overcome it, then you've made the right choice because you're putting yourself on the line for that. You know, you're sacrificing yourself for this goal or ideal that you have. There's nothing
Mm.
more important than that. And that will carry you through. And I'm not saying it's easy, but that will carry you through if you stick to it. Look, I get told no all the time. And I don't think anybody really realize, I don't think too many people realize that I still get, I'm saying, no, thank you. It's not right
Yep.
for us, and all that. I still get that. And anybody that tells you that they aren't told no
Mm.
may not be telling you the truth or the whole truth.
Yeah.
And you need those no's. You need that failure. There's nothing better to strengthen yourself and learn than a good failure. And I've struck out plenty of times. I've been doing this for over 35 years. I've produced over 100 books. I've created and produced three of my own series and worked on a few others. I've done ad campaigns. I've worked for hundreds of magazines. I have done posters and brochures and annual reports back in the day when I was just an illustrator. I have written scripts for shows, screenplays for feature films. I've done all these things. And I am told no occasionally, and sometimes more often than occasionally. But I believe in what I'm doing and I enjoy what I'm doing. And so I'll
Mm.
stick with it. If I'm lucky,
Mm.
I'll be
Mm.
able to do this for the
Yep.
rest of the time that I'm here.
Yep.
But you really have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, that is so true. And it's also the law of average, right, Dan? Like if
Yeah,
you apply to 10 different places, expect that maybe only two people will respond, or maybe
right.
even they won't. So you just have to keep trying. And the fact that everybody starts from zero and everybody has been, rejected once at least in their lifetime, that brings in that sense of humility and shredding of the ego, so to speak. I think it's very important. And I also believe we all need to hone the art of not taking it personally when there's a rejection. Maybe it's not the right fit for that point in time, for that person, for that
Mhm.
opportunity. But
Right.
for your art, maybe there is a right platform that's awaiting. Because I came
Right.
across the Joshua Bell experiment, if you might have come across that. So, the Joshua Bell experiment is widely popular, where this musician, where people pay thousands of dollars to listen to him.
Mhm.
He's a musician, and they did this social experiment where he was at the subway station playing his there's a specific instrument, looks like a cello, but it's not, it's a different one. And he earned, I don't know, like $10, $20, something like that. So this is the
Mhm.
same person
Mhm.
who people pay thousands of dollars to watch his concerts. And
Right.
now this, musician, this virtuoso is completely ignored at a subway station, which goes to show that a right platform will honor your craft. With that being said, we truly honor you, Dan, for everything that you have done, for everything that you're doing, and the positive frequency that you're spreading around the globe. Thank you so
You.
very much for being on the Tenzin Show. It is an absolute pleasure connecting with you, and speaking with you. What an honor it is. Thank you.
Thank you. This was so much fun, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.